Polynomials. Okay, first thing you're doing when you're doing polynomials is you're going to determine the amount of terms in them. Okay, and to know that, you got to know that terms are the pieces, and this is my own definition, of the expression separated by the operation of addition or subtraction. This has nothing to do with the multiplication or division. Okay, so when looking at A, okay, so you look, here's an addition sign, here's an addition sign. Okay, so then this is a term, here's a term, and the 3 is another term. So in this one, there are 3 terms. Okay, this next one, once again, there's just an addition. There's a term in front, a term in back, so this one has 2. C does not have an addition or nor a subtraction, so there is only 1 term. In D, we see that we have an addition, another addition, and a subtraction. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 terms here. Okay. Now you can also name these. Here are the names of how you would name your polynomials by the terms. If you have 1 term, it's a monomial. If you have 2, it's a binomial. If you have 3, it's a trinomial. And if you have 4 or more, they call it a polynomial. Okay, so going back up to the ones we just did, A has 3 terms, so it would be a trinomial. B, since it has 2, is what's considered a binomial. C, since it has 1, is a monomial. And then D, it has 4 terms, so it is a polynomial. And then sometimes you can also say it's a polynomial with 4 terms. Okay, so let's take a look at one more. I have an E down here. Okay, so first look how many. I've got here an addition, another addition, here's a subtraction, and here's a subtraction. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 terms. So once again, this is a polynomial with 5 terms. Okay. Oops. All right. So now let's take a look. There's another way. You can also distinguish them by the degrees. Okay, and you're either going to work at them with monomials or polynomials. Okay, so either ones with 1 or ones with many. This one would be a binomial because it has 2 terms. Okay, but what you're doing here is deciding what the degrees are. Okay, let's look at monomials first. Okay, every time they're a monomial, it's that they don't have the addition or subtraction. Okay, so then what you do to determine the degrees is you look at the degrees that are associated, or those powers, to your variables or the numbers. So like for this one, we only have a 2. So this one is to the 2nd degree. Okay, for ones like for this one, you have a 2 and a 4, so you add them together, so 2 plus 4. This one is to the 6th degree. Okay, for this one, it doesn't have an exponent. But if you remember going back to the lessons we did before, if it's not there, that means it's a 1. So this one is to the 1st degree. Or actually, no, this one is a 0. This is what's called a constant number, because it doesn't have a variable. This one, since it has a variable, that's the one that has the 1st degree. So then this one has the 1st degree. Okay, and then looking at this one, we'd put a 1 at the C, so then we'd add it up. It's 3 plus 2, which is 5, and 6. So this is to the 6th degree also. Okay, now when you look at polynomials, and you'll know it if they're a polynomial because they're separated by the addition or subtraction, is that you look for the one that's got the highest degree. Okay, so like in this top one, this x would have a 1, and this one would have the 5. So since it's the 5 is the highest, this is at the 5th degree. Okay, so then looking at this one here, this has got a 4, this has got a 2, this would have a 1, but this is a constant, so this doesn't have a degree. So looking, 4 is the biggest, so this one is the 4th degree. Okay, here, this is the constant, so it doesn't have a degree. This one would have a 1, so this one is to the 1st degree. Okay, once again, this doesn't have a degree, so it's still a 0 degree. Okay. And just like with naming them by the terms, you can also name these by your degree. First, you'd have a 0, which we've already said was constant. If it's a 1 degree, it's a linear. If it's 2, it's quadratic. If it's 3, it's cubic. Then you see 4, which is quartic. And then you have 5, which is quintic. And then if you have 6 or more, you just name it by 6th, 7th degree, and so on. Okay, so going back up, for these, this would be the 2nd. So going back and look at the ones we did before, that one's at the 2nd degree. So that one's a quadratic. 6th degree, so you just say 6th degree. So this was 0, so it's a constant like we already discussed. This is at the 1st degree, so it's linear. Once again, 6th degree, so just leave it. Going back to the polynomials, it's 5th degree, so that's the quintic. A 4th degree was the quartic. Back to the 1st degree, that was your linear. And the 0 degree was your constant. So once again, no variable. That is what's called a constant. Okay. If you didn't get a chance to write these down, here they are again. Make sure you get them written down. And then remember, just for 6 or more, you just write it down to the degree. Okay? All right. We have one more thing to do. They call it writing polynomials in standard form. And what that means is that you look at the degrees on each. So this one would be a 1. This one has a 3. This is your constant, which means it's got a 0 degree. And then that one's got a 2 degree. When you write them in standard form, you do them from least to greatest by degrees. So since this is the highest, you write the highest first. So it's a negative. Make sure you write the negative. So it's negative 4 to the 3rd power. So we've used that one. Next we have the second one. So it's a negative x squared. We use that one. Remember, whatever is in front for the operation continues with that variable. Okay, then here's our last one. Then it's nothing in front of it. That means it's positive, so it's plus 20x, and I don't need to put the 1. And then your constant goes last. This is standard form. You put it from least to greatest by degrees of the variables. Okay, let's look at one more. In this one, your y to the 5th would be your greatest, so y to the 5th. Plus, the next one would be your y to the 3rd. and then your plus 4y. Once again, this is put in standard form. Now just kind of going back, how many terms does this one have? We have this operation, and this one. So we have 4 terms. So when named, this one would be a polynomial with 4 terms. And how many degrees? Since it's a polynomial, that means it's going to go by its highest, which is the third. So it's the 3rd degree. So when you name that, that is the cubic. So this one is what's called a cubic polynomial. Okay, so let's look at this one. How many terms? 1. We have 2 operations, so there's 3 terms. And a 3 term is what's called a trinomial. Okay, and then the highest degree would be its 5. So when you put it in standard form from greatest to least, then it's always your first one. And since this is the 5th one, that is your quintic. So the 5th degree is the highest, so it's the quintic, so it's cubed. This is called a quintic trinomial. Okay, and if you've noticed, each time I've named them, it always goes by your degrees and then your term name. Okay, this is every time. And that's what's called classifying your polynomial, is when you put them together. So let's take a look. Okay, so for this one, it's by one operation. So we have 2 terms. The highest degree would be the 1. Okay, so going back looking at your stuff, 1 is when it's linear. So this one is called a linear binomial since you have 2 terms. Okay. All right, for this next one, I see we have 2 operations. So I got 3 terms. My highest degree, since it's in standard form, is 2. So it's to the 2nd degree. So when it's a 2nd degree, it's a quadratic. And since there's 3 terms, this is what's called a trinomial. Okay. Let's look at one more. Okay. Once again, see how many terms you got. I have 3 operations, 4 terms. Highest degree is 7th. And there's no name for a 7th. So it's the 7th degree polynomial.